How are you? Welcome to Critical Moves of Telesur, always with the geopolitical analysis. The oil of the future, white gold, the mineral of the century are some of the ways that this liquid has been called. In America, 3 countries are the ones that have the greatest reserves, which is always more desirable because of all of the applications that it can be used. What is the relationship between the coup d'etat in Bolivia, that is the possessor of the greatest resources? Is this casual? Was it just coincidence that the coup was 6 days before the cancellation of a very important contract? What could be the future of the commercialization of this oil in Bolivia? This is what we're going to be analyzing. Let's begin. Let's start by listening to the declarations of the legitimate president of Bolivia when he spoke about the projects that have been boosted for the extraction and commercialization of this mineral during his period. Bolivia is located in a good region where the greatest reserves are located. We have received many companies that are interested in exploiting and extracting. And now we have Indian companies. We have a plan of 41 extraction plants in many, many cities. And these are the lithium programs. And what we're doing is looking for associates in Germany and Europe. Can you imagine that lithium industry based with the government and without the U.S.? That they won't allow us to do that. Now we have the strategic alliance between China and the greatest, who is the greatest consumer of lithium, and Bolivia, the country with the largest reserves of lithium, who will help us to attain great progress in the industrialization of lithium. We were listening to the declarations of the Chinese representative in this strategic alliance that had been established with Bolivia for the extraction and commercialization of lithium. But where is the lithium triangle? Let's locate it. Lithium triangle. This is a very desirable zone. This is in the south part of America, in the border with Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. Some of the cities that are nearby are Salar de Uyuni, Salar de Atacama, Salar de Cizarro, Salar del Hombre Muerto, Salar Antofalia. These are indigenous communities, majority. 68% of all of the reserves well known in the world are here. Bolivia holds 30% of the world reserves, Chile with 21% and Argentina with 17%. It is said that the area has lithium that is equivalent of all the oil of Saudi Arabia. Some is exported to China, United States, Holland, UK, and Russia. Let's see why lithium is so desirable. Lithium, also known as white gold, is a strategic resource that you can make carbonate of lithium, and it is necessary for making the batteries for cars and for electronic devices. They are also used for making aluminium and glass. Many companies, like the pharmaceuticals, have their eyes on the triangle of lithium that is in Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina. These are the countries that the most industrialized companies are the ones that seek this element These nations offer great incentives, like the extension of paying taxes and financing many of their projects to the end of letting these countries have their companies operate. The demand for lithium has increased, according to the Bloomberg. If the electric sector increases, it will go up to 10 million tons a year. South America must go beyond just producing the resource. In this case, Argentina has already 2 plants that are processing this element. And what they do is they already produce batteries. In Bolivia, before the coup d'etat, they were analyzing the possibility of constructing great plants and create a mixed members company. This initiative was going to be signed days before his coup. So let's read the Deutsche Welle, and it says Evo Morales has brought down the agreement for the mixed company of lithium with a signature of Germany. President Evo Morales announced this Sunday that he was going to bring down the decree to authorize a mixed company of the Lithium Bolivianos and the German ACI systems. What they want to do is they were going to process this mineral. Unfortunately, we have reached this point, and I guess time will just say who was thinking of Potosí when making this decision. Things are already done, and Cejas already done. The committee of Bolivia had begun mobilizations to demand the Bolivian government to give more benefits to the people in exchange for the exploitation of lithium, because what they say is that this only benefits foreign companies. And in this context, it is important to follow how the situation with the self-proclaimed government of Janine Áñez in Bolivia. And let's see a headline that says, Bolivia thinks it's appropriate to extend the de facto government until after January 22. She said that not only the government but also the parliament, instead of creating a void in the government, the most appropriate thing would be to have a prolongation of our mandate. I think this would be the most democratic thing. This is what Janine Áñez, the self-proclaimed president of Bolivia, has declared. This is reported by Sputnik. Áñez also said that she expected that the Constitutional Tribunal have a position on the vision if the government and the parliament can still rule until the next month.
Admitió formalmente el martes 31 de diciembre la consulta del Parlamento y tiene plazo de 30 días para emitir su opinión. Y ahora le presento una información que trae el periódico La Jornada,
that is brought by La Jornada, that speaks about how beyond the triangle of lithium there is this expectation about this mineral. in the region of the border of Chihuahua and Sonora, there is a business that has never been exploited. It's called lithium, which will be the petroleum of the future. Just in this sector, there will be a plant, and they will be one of the biggest producers of this resources. Mecanum Lithium and Cantham Lithium, both companies, one Canadian, one Chinese, have established themselves in Sonora with the objective to exploit lithium. This also counts for tons of reserves.
Los 21 millones de toneladas del campo Uyuni en Bolivia, dice este texto.
The difference between this resource and the one of Bolivia is that the Bolivian one is certified. This is that there is a certainty that they exist, while the Mexican ones are not still certified. The reserves in lithium in Mexico are very important, but they're not as big as the one that exists in South America. The truth is that we are very far from the powerful countries in this regard. Let's continue reviewing. There's an article of which I was talking about that belongs to La Jornada de Mexico, and you can review it so you can reread it or analyze it. And now let me recommend an article called Behind the Coup, the Lithium Industry in Bolivia. This has been written by Agustina Sanchez, and it's been published in claxo.org. It says that lithium possesses the major resources, and to differences in Argentina and Chile, where the multinational companies are owners of these resources, Bolivia, as a country, are the ones who sovereignly controls the exploitation and the commercialization. This makes it unique because it's, and of course, it's contrary to the policy of the U.S. Of course, Bolivia and the United States have different points of view on this. In this case, Bolivia has decided to exploit and commercialize their own resources in a sovereign way. What they do is they don't export commodities or any other products. What they do is they produce electric cars, technology, batteries, and now that Trump has been in touch with the militaries of Bolivia, you can think that this has been a coordinated move to put an end to the insubordination of Evo Morales since 2006. Bolivia has been one of the leaders in the commercialization of this area, and they were ready to be the leader of this industry in the Latin America and the Caribbean region. However, the coup has stopped this process, and now the tendency, the people of Bolivia must defend their sovereignty and be vigilant that the policies of the country will not be submitted to the control of the U.S. After having this revision, we're going to update some information with our correspondent, Freddy Morales. Hello, Freddy. How are you?
Gracias.
Thank you.
La industrialización del
The
litio de por lo
industrialization
menos
of
3 salarios
lithium
bolivianos ha quedado en suspenso.
Of at least 3 plants has been put on a hold since the November coup. One of the actions before the coup was to annul a contract with the German company Asisa, with which the government had made a mixed company so they can go into one of the phases of the industrialization.
Y la empresa alemana La Inversión.
The Civic Committee of Potosí was able to annul this, the elaboration of this company and asked for Evo Morales to step down. This company was going to process hydroxide of lithium and many other elements and the Salado Uni. But this frustrated project is one of 41 options to industrialize lithium that is called white gold because it can hold a lot of energy. And Bolivia is a leading resource in lithium. Evo Morales was able to start processing. They were able to make batteries for bicycles and for electricity, and to install them in communities where Bolivia didn't have any electricity, and now they can have access to electricity and computers. There was also a development, a plant for carbons for medical use. The government of Evo Morales had a plan for development in the Salado de Uyuni until the year 2030, with the objective to make batteries for cars that are now in high demand. In total, it was foreseen to develop 41 different types of plants and to industrialize different elements. This was going to happen in Potosí and Oruro with the invention of $3.5 billion. Whereas Chile and Argentina have different ways of producing because they have given concessions to private companies, whereas Bolivia has decided to still be the owner of these companies and participate with other companies in mixed nature companies. Now it is necessary to wait to the upcoming elections to see what will be the end of this story. And of course, this element will be important for the upcoming debates, for the presidential debates. One of the main income of Bolivia, it would be lithium. Thank you very much, Freddy. We are now going to mark a pause in our critical moves. But before, I would like to invite you to participate with us through our critical move. Let's see it. It's published here on our screen. It says President Evo Morales has canceled the contract with a system to industrialize lithium in the Salar de Uyuni. 6 days later, there was a coup d'etat in Bolivia. Who will take the white gold as the treasure of this war? We'll be right back.
¿Qué incidencia pudo haber tenido en el golpe de Estado del presidente Evo Morales el hecho de que Bolivia sea poseedor de
Bolivia, that Bolivia is the great holder of lithium in the world? Let's analyze this. In the past 2 decades, there has been an increase in the demand of lithium worldwide, and the prices have gone on 3 times more. Chile has been the main exporter of this element, and it has satisfied 65% of the demand, while Argentina has increased in the past 2 decades, and from being the supplier of 1%, it goes up to 20%. Bolivia had not exported yet until Evo Morales rose to the government. During his period, he prioritized the production, and there was there was 41 plants that were going to be constructed. Over 4,000 billion euros were going to be received as income. Let's begin with this first part of the analysis. From Colombia, we have María Consuelo Ahumada. She's a PhD in political science, and she's also an investigator, and she's expert in Andean nations. And from Argentina, Julián Aguirre. He's also a very highly experienced international analyzer. Let's start with María Consuelo Ahumada. Let's begin with you. Why in Bolivia, members of this triangle of lithium, why did it happen in Bolivia and not in Argentina or in Chile? Good afternoon, Ray. It's a pleasure to be with you. Well, I think that this is the question, the most important question. This has to do with the changes in the geopolitics of this region. Let's go a bit back to the beginning of the century. We have with this competition with the U.S. and the U.S. going after all of the resources in Latin America. And in this context, the importance of lithium. And in 2005, Evo Morales rises to office, and there's this law to bring back all of these things to the government. There's a change of government, the perspectives of doing business with the competition. And apart from this, there is a crisis in the production of fossil fuels and the climate change, which is a reality that we cannot deny. And all of this is within the geopolitics, and it's important to see it as it is. So in this context, there is also an increase of the need to use clean energies, electric automobiles. And there's a great development in electronic devices, cell phones, tablets. And here comes Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile, and these are the richest countries in lithium. The Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia is huge, and on the other side is the desert of Atacama, and the Salar del Hombre Muerto is the one in Argentina. Well, Chile has a policy that is to sell natural resources. This is the so-called prosperity that Chile was advertising. That came to an end with the massive protests this year. Argentina has attempted to manage this in industrial development, and Bolivia. Bolivia has a lot of other problems because the posture of Evo Morales with the worldwide economics, he was the leader to speak about the war of water, to expel the ambassador of the U.S. and the embassy. He was a prominent figure. So if you put all of these elements together, apart from the importance of lithium and the perspective that might be expected, and an agreement with China and with another one from Holland, not only to exploit it, but to produce lithium batteries and to start producing automobiles, with all of the difficulties this may have. This works in favor of the military coup. As always, thank you, Doctora. Can you please stay with us all the way to the end? Now, let's speak with Julián Aguirre. Julián, to what degree has lithium become a curse that where the outcome was the coup d'etat on President Morales. Good afternoon. Well, in regards to lithium, it has to do with the innovative aspect and that was in the policy. They were going to extract it, process it, and commercialize it. This meant that they needed a lot of development degree and technological degree. Not many countries had this program foreseen. And of course, it's important to know the importance that lithium will have worldwide and the way that governments allow themselves to and of course, there is a lot of interest in lithium. Bolivia used to have with a long-term strategy by which they positioned this country as a great supplier, but also as a final end product. This has great relevance for the development of the country and for the diversification of the production. Of course, this is the relevance of lithium that will become an important element of dispute. They will all try to guarantee the access and control of this mineral. And it has been highlighted how important it is to make a strategic planning to produce batteries based on lithium. Likewise, the Commercial Department of the U.S. has alerted in a report about the vulnerability of the U.S. economy confronted by the impossibility they have of having their own mines to produce lithium. So the U.S. feels that they are vulnerable. And now and now it is foreseen that the electric cars that in the next 15 years may come into the markets and increase their insertion in the global markets. This would be an answer to all of the pollution in the great cities. This obviously involves all of the great companies of the world. And if we see that China is also can feel threatened by this production, and they know therefore the information of controlling of this type of minerals. I don't want to go before we can go to the doctor again, because as I know she's a connoisseur of the Bolivian reality, and I want to ask her about the parallelism between all of the desires of these countries like the United States. Do you think do you think that it's crazy to say that lithium is to Bolivia what oil is to Venezuela? Without a doubt. This is why they call them the oil of the 21st century and white gold. This can be an element to divide the income, and or on the otherwise it could be just a way to just keep things in a good condition but not increase them.
bastante condicionante de la dinámica de los próximos años. Esto que vos decís, yo creo que es sumamente cierto.
I think that what you're saying is totally true. I think that lithium has this double element, and so it can become a very important catalyzer.
Estratégica, sostenida a largo plazo, pero también los ubicará, por supuesto, en las líneas de falla, en las zonas de disputa,
And in the war zone will be always lithium.
Que encontrarán en estas materias, en estos materiales, en estos minerales estratégicos, aquel condicionante, aquel factor que puede ser sinónimo de un incremento en su productividad y en su eficiencia, pero que también puede impactar negativamente. Por ejemplo,
but of course, this could also have a negative impact because the exploitation can become very expensive, and this will increase the price of the final product. Let's go back to Dr. Maria Consuelo. I would like to reach a conclusion based on an article of La Jornada that I was sharing with my audience, saying that lithium can only lead you to more lithium, because if we understand that what's going on after the coup of November 10, what can we do if everything is satisfied?
No entendí la segunda parte de la pregunta.
Exacto, que teniendo en cuenta el panorama que se está viviendo hoy en Bolivia,
bearing in mind the situation of Bolivia,
que nos permiten certificar que hubo una relación directa entre estas,
and now that we see that there is a direct relationship between the reserves of Bolivia and how the state that Evo Morales was managing, and of course there's a direct relationship with the coup d'état, but on the other hand there's the news that there is a good reserve in Mexico also. In case this is certified, what would be the case of Colombia?
Haciendo como previsiones.
Entiendo, ya ahora sí le entendí. Sí, yo pienso que el tema.
I think that this topic of the
bueno, históricamente ha sido así. Más recursos.
I think that this has been historically so because.
Pero también, incluso en UNASUR se llegaron a avanzar estudios en ese sentido.
And we have had some studies in UNASUR. These strategic resources are a way out for the development of Latin America, based on based on not only extracting them, selling them, but also extracting them, processing them. Of course, bearing in mind climate change, this would be a very important element in favor of Latin America. And this is because the United States wants to keep on controlling, no matter what, these strategic resources for their own benefit. But of course, so China, Russia, and other countries can't get near the region. So I think, I don't know if I'm able to see this site. And let's hope that if we go back to the UNASUR idealism, we can find a way out of this.
Visto eso desde el punto de vista del desarrollo de las naciones, sería, digamos que lo ideal. Pero también mi pregunta iba encaminada, doctora, hacia no se podría estar previendo un golpe al actual Ejecutivo mexicano en caso de que se certifiquen esas reservas de litio basándonos en la realidad boliviana, ¿o sería también descabellado pensar así?
Well, do you think it's I do think that there are some contradictions, because López Obrador has done everything possible and has managed these contradictions very well. Sometimes we don't understand what he's doing. Well, but the thing is that the threat of the U.S. is very large. And of course, we know that this is an electoral year for the U.S. So of course, the threat will keep on increasing. And there is a law in the U.S. saying that the United States can go into any country to follow any drug lord or terrorist. So all of these are tensions that have generated a lot of rejection. in the U.S. Congress and with the American people. And López Obrador said that they will not allow any invasion, but they will allow any cooperation. And of course, what they're trying to do is to defend their interests, like it's been with drug trafficking and migratory laws. Well, thank you very much, Doctor, for all of your explanations. And Julián Aguirre, I want to thank you both. We'll see you soon. Now let's go to another pause in our program. But remember, we have our questions set on Twitter, through which you can participate with us, give us your feedback, or just interact. President Evo Morales canceled a contract with the German company ACI Systems about the industrialization of lithium in the Salar of Uyuni. 6 days later, there was a consolidation of the coup d'etat in Bolivia. Who will take the lithium? Give us your opinion. When we're back, we have another guest with which we will be talking.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursday, only on Telesur.
In the midst of the commercial dispute with the U.S. and China, how will the investments be for the Bolivian lithium? This is what we're going to see. The coup on President Evo Morales, beyond the political consequences, may have an economic objective because of the lithium resources that they have. The American and Canadian companies are expecting to exploit they exploit these resources in Bolivia now that they have a president that is willing to accede. China has invested $1 billion to exploit lithium in Bolivia, and this is also, they want to create a trail all the way from Bolivia to China, so they can have the main materials to produce all of the devices China makes. Let's go to Oscar Lloreda. He's an expert in geopolitics, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much for being here. Well, we are now seeing lithium as the main objective in bringing down Evo Morales in Bolivia. But of course, this also has a geopolitical background. Well, yes, of course, I was listening to all of the reports. But now what we can say is that we're in the midst of a commercial war. This is not only because of money, but they want hegemony. And this is a transition where hegemony has consolidated as a unipolar world after the fall of the USSR. There was a death of some of the beliefs back then. But now with China, that for the last 30 years has had a huge expansion, and not only in the commercial side, but also in the political stance. And now with the resurgency of Russia, with a more autonomous point of view after the fall of the USSR. So now we are restructuring the world where not only the topic of resources is important, but also the ways of controlling that are trying to be imposed to show dominion. So in the Bolivian case and also in the Venezuelan case, it is we must think that all of the movements that are done in the region have to do with the demonstration of the United States that this is this area of direct influence. This is their former backyard. And they still keep on using this term. And everything that doesn't answer to their philosophy can be deposed. So we can say that United States was able to stand 15 years of in the region where the left-wing governments were establishing. This answers my question. Why did the coup happen in Bolivia and not in Chile and Argentina? Of course, the answer was given by the professor. And this is because Argentina and Chile are willing to commercialize lithium with them and with companies, American companies and Canadian companies. And they were going to, of course, they were going to take over these fields as if they were their own. It wasn't going to be a concession, but just a secession. So the transnationals can make use of them. I think in the Bolivian case, it's been interesting that they were trying to execute a different model, where we're trying to break with the 60s tendency, where there is a relationship to just export our goods to the north. And now we just want to before what happened was that you just exported these goods and there was nothing given back. And of course what this means is that we lose twice in this process, because we sell it very cheap and then we have to buy the end products. This is and this has been a turning point in the past 15 years. And in this process there's this fight over maintaining control. And now this is why the United States decides to go forward on an attack on these on territories that are not willing to go forward with their own will. Well, now let's think. I want to ask you, do you think it's a coincidence that only 6 or 7 days after Evo Morales having brought down this contract that had been agreed with Germany for the exploitation of the Salado de Uyuni for lithium, there's this coup. Do you think it's a coincidence and it's only the U.S. who's behind this? Let's see, what's the role of lithium? Lithium is a metal, a mineral that can accumulate energy. This makes this energy matrix to become larger. It increases the efficiency of our energy, because now what happens is that much of the energy is lost because you cannot accumulate it. However, with lithium, it is possible, and you can store it to be used later. And of course, I think this is considered clean energy. Yes, it is. However, we have to clarify that lithium is not in itself a fuel, but it allows you to accumulate. So this opens different types of processes. If you see China nowadays, especially public services, it is electric. And to a high degree, the batteries that are used for those cars are made of lithium. So lithium is a fundamental element to give a boost for these economies that are based on batteries. So it's not only a problem of the United States, it's for all of these centers of hegemony. And now there are centers that are part of. And it's important to see the companies that are operating in these countries. These companies are, of course, they're not. These are Americans and of other countries. And once again, it's not only the United States, but it's also the European Union, because the company that was involved in Bolivia was German. Well, there is no way to know. There's really nowhere to know. But what conclusions can we reach if we see all of the elements? Well, of course, there are European companies as well as American companies that are involved. There is no doubt of that. But what is the specific role of one or the other? This is not possible to determine this now. Maybe in the future it will be. I would like to go into a little bit of this concession that was brought down by the Civic Committee. This committee assumes the position of the people, quote unquote. But this is the same committee that makes this agreement to be closed, and then they ask for Evo Morales' withdrawal from the presidency. So it's very interesting to observe if we can reread the facts and to see why this civic committee was betting on this rupture, not only to favor the people of those regions that could be affected by these companies, but also because it was part of the game against the model that was being imposed by the Evo Morales government. So this action of the Comité Cívico of Potosí and what happened in the electoral process when the winner was Evo Morales in the first round, and of course the results were not recognized. And then they demanded the president to establish new elections. Once Evo Morales said, okay, let's check the results, and if necessary, we'll go back to the polls. Then the discourse changed. They said, no, we want the president out. So, of course, there's an escalation. This is part of their strategy. It's important to see how some groups have taken over the so-called popular demands. The same name of this civic group says it all. And behind this is Luis Fernando Camacho. And let's not forget that this was used in Venezuela too. In this case, I think it's important that the Civic Committee was playing a double role. They were assuming a statement that was beneficial for them to break this agreement, by which the leaders of this committee did not agree with. Why? Because this agreement was a mixed company. which is not a model that Áñez, the president the president now, would not be willing to go through, nor Camacho, or none of these other people, these mixed companies, because their models are different. They're much more like the ones in Chile and Argentina. And of course, they take over a discourse and they use it in their favor, and then when they have what they want, they change it altogether. And now the problem is no longer the agreement, but the president itself. Okay, now I would like to ask, well, May 3rd is the day of the new elections to Bolivia. Do you think something could happen here up until to that date with the lithium? Well, I think that there has been some things that we are going over because there were some rights that have been taken away from the Bolivians. And now these rights have been reduced with the passing of days. So it's very probable that they would want to open the markets of lithium. Although being a transitional government, they should not be able to do so. But we see that Ms. Áñez is asking for extension of the time. And well, let's see what happens, because they cannot take decisions for which they don't have the power to do so. So it's possible that they renegotiate what's going on, or even better, they could open new concessions, keep the former ones. And now, how would the current contract go on? That's why I think that this is important to see it very carefully. Well, let's see what the United States does, because what they could do is they could say, kick China out. And now, maybe the way to relate with China is different than the one that the United States has, because the relationships that China established are more equal. It's not saying that China is 100% pure, but we must analyze and set clear that the relationships that are based on the agreements with China are totally different than those that are established with companies or the U.S. itself. Thank you very much, Oscar, for your analysis. Let's go to our conclusions. As you've seen, the doubt is always there. Should it be the government of Áñez or the results of what happens on May 3rd? Will they respect what is agreed between Evo Morales and the Chinese companies in the extraction of lithium? Another question is, if after the coup, will the agreement with Germany will it start again? All of this will allow us to understand a bit better to what degree was lithium the reason of this coup d'etat and the reconfiguration of the polity. For today, this is all.